Good evening. My name is Mary Ellen Weeks. I'm so glad that you could be here this evening. I am the wife of Captain Matthew Weeks, a soldier currently deployed to Iraq. We're here to discuss post-traumatic stress disorder and how it may affect you, your loved one, and your family as they return home from Iraq. We're going to discuss the causes, symptoms, and treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as things that the Army does for us to provide us with help in dealing with this situation. Causes for post-traumatic stress disorder are injury to oneself or being wounded in the line of duty. Also, losing a battle buddy. Soldiers form a bond to one another while they are deployed, relying upon each other in life or death situations every day. So seeing a fellow soldier killed is certainly something that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. Also, witnessing the Iraqi way of life, the way they treat their women, the way they raise their children, these are all factors that are completely different from the United States and things that are an eye-opening experience for them, which is hard to readjust to. Simply being away from home for long extended periods of time, dealing with symptoms of PTSD, that's one of the first things, is if the soldier has difficulty readjusting to being home, if they have a feeling of being unsafe, they react strangely to loud noises, have trouble sleeping, they feel disconnected from your family or have a lack of patience with children and spouses, feeling that things have just changed too much since they've gone, having flashbacks, just feeling as if something is related to what they've witnessed in Iraq. These are all things to look out for. Lack of patience, substance abuse, road rage, also feeling alone. If a soldier is starting to seem depressed or constantly wants to be alone, as if no one understands what they've been through. These are things that you want to keep an eye out on in determining whether or not your spouse is troubled by post-traumatic stress disorder. As far as treatments go, of course there's counseling available, but the first step is admitting to the disorder, realizing recognition of the disorder and acceptance of the disorder, understanding what it's all about, continuous counseling, whether it be through group therapy or one-on-one with a chaplain or religious person or an actual counselor provided by a medical facility. And lastly, of course, there are medicinal aids. As a last resort, if they're having trouble sleeping, sleeping aids can be prescribed. Serotonin inhibitors as anxiety control. But the major point is that we want to help them through this, give them as much support as we can, and have them continue with their counseling and speak to someone who does understand what they're going through. The Army itself has provided us, as well as our soldiers before they left, with the possibility and tried to get us to understand what post-traumatic stress disorder is all about. While the soldiers are deployed, they certainly have briefings all about that. They hand out pamphlets, similar to the one that I've handed out to you this evening. Like I said, they do give briefings. They discuss the disorder and the possibility of this being an issue when they return home. They also create a 90-day window. Once the soldier returns home, it's called a reintegration period. They are only allowed to stay at one post for that 90 days, return to home so that their chain of command can keep track of them, see how they're reacting to everything, see how they're handling the family life, being back at home. These are all things that we're all looking out for, and they have made plenty of chaplains and counselors available to us if need be. In conclusion, we need to discuss that post-traumatic stress disorder is a very difficult disorder to diagnose and also to treat. It's becoming more prevalent. Since 9/11, the percentage has risen by about 10%, 10% more than before 9/11. We had 10% then, now we have 20% of our population affected by this disorder. The military is definitely taking steps. They have their briefings, they hand out their pamphlets, and they do provide us with the reintegration period. But the main focus is that we want to work together as families with our soldiers, seek help if needed, and know where to turn to. Have a common understanding and patience with your soldier, and hopefully with all of this information, we'll be able to help them out. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. What types of things should we look out for in our spouses when they return for this post-traumatic stress syndrome?
We absolutely want to watch out for things like road rage, things like substance abuse, things completely out of the ordinary for your spouse. No one knows your spouse better than yourself, so you need to make sure and take into account of how they were before compared to how they are now. If you see any erratic change, then bring it to your soldier first. Try to discuss it with them.
Thank you. Where should we look for help if we suspect that our soldier does have this
post-traumatic stress disorder? What we want to do is essentially go first to your spouse. If not from there, if your spouse is responding to you and is willing to seek help, if we go from there, then we can go to the chain of command. Ask your spouse to go to his chain of command. From there, they can direct you towards chaplains, towards counselors. And the Army has several medical facilities on post in which you can turn to handle the disorder, to seek help.
Yes, could I ask a question? Should we assume that our soldier is suffering from this disorder?
Absolutely not. We don't want to assume that everyone suffers from this disorder. This pamphlet that I handed out gives you several resources to turn to, things to look for, but it's only a small percentage of our soldiers that are going to deal with this disease. You don't want to assume anything because then you'll be looking for things that aren't necessarily there. But keep your eyes peeled for those symptoms, and if they do arise, then feel free to contact anyone in their chain of command or any of the medical facilities, or also the MWR Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.